An ambitious wizard sealed a salamander within this axe. It became imbued with potent fire magic and even greater destructive power. The salamander whispered to the magician, "Feed the axe blood, and we will become even stronger." Bewitched by the power, the wizard began to seek victims to slay. "Well, shall you give us more blood?" So whispered the axe, its appetite for flesh growing. The wizard, intoxicated by the power, had no means to resist. Not so long ago, the axe was discovered lying next to a withered mummy as dry as petrified tree. Even now, the axe whispers to those drawn by the dark nights, "Kill," it says. This mace was made by an apprentice wizard with a single swing of a blacksmith's hammer. However, this apprentice could only conjure little more than small flames. As big as an ogre and with an appetite to match, the apprentice did not look much like a sorcerer, and he found himself bullied by his master and fellow apprentices. One day, he and another apprentice began a violent argument that did not end until the giant wizard lost his senses, swung his mace, and struck his colleague dead. As he tasted blood, the mace absorbed the falling apprentice's magical power. The pupil realized that he could make the weapon even stronger, so he slew his master with a blow to the head. Queen Brumhide, daughter of Visigoth King Athanagild, was wife to Sigbert I of the Astrasia and ruled the kingdom as regent in her son's name after the death of the king. Neighboring Neostrasia was ruled by Chilperic I and Queen Predagund. Seeking to expand their kingdom at the expense of their neighbor, they had Sigbert assassinated. This sparked a long and bloody feud between the two kingdoms. The rift between the countries deepened as the Brunhild and Ferigund's relatives were murdered one by one. Eventually, Brunhild was betrayed while attending peace negotiations and was sentenced to death by Clothar II. This is the poleaxe that was used to chop off her head. There was once a surgeon who saved many patients from sickness and death. Word of his skills spread, and so great did his renown grow that he was appointed physician to the king. Several years passed. One day, the king's daughter fell gravely ill. Despite all the doctor's skill and efforts, the illness proved fatal, and the princess slipped into death. A hateful grudge towards the doctor took root in the grieving king's heart. Deaf to the doctor's entreaties, the king sentenced the physician's family to death. Mad with grief, the doctor threw deadly poison into the royal well, and the entire royal household died agonizing deaths. The blade of this axe was sharpened using water drawn from that well. This monk's spade was owned by the ruler of the greatest empire of the age. Said to control lightning and slice through darkness, it was dedicated as a guardian weapon in the shrine of the gods. A warrior famed for his courage plundered the weapon and set out to conquer the world. Summoning lightning and thunder to his aid, he brought nation after nation into his empire. He sat at the center of a vast empire, but the vassal states chafed under his rule and rose up against him. In the end, betrayed even by his own army, the warrior's empire collapsed. He took refuge in a small castle. As the besieging army put the castle to the torch, he held the monk's spade at his side and, together with his favorite concubine, waited for death. A young couple, blessed by fortune, were to be wed. But on the night before the wedding, a small, shining spirit appeared before the young bride. The ghost whispered in her ear, speaking straight to the weakness in her heart. "Do you wish to make him all yours? Do you wish to ensure his heart is yours for all eternity?" When the girl recovered her senses, she found this gore-splattered axe in her hand, and before her the blooded head of her beloved. Now he is yours forever. Even now, the ghost of the young bride can be seen wandering the village, garbed in a blood-splattered dress and clutching the sightless head of the man she was to marry. This sword belonged to a determined painter who murdered innocents every night and collected their blood. With this grisly harvest, he painted masterpieces the likes of which the world had never seen. The painter had a dream. He dreamt that one day he would create paintings so powerful that all who would view them would be at peace. Each day he painted feverishly, chasing his dream. But none cared for his work, and he began to feel cold, uncaring stares of others. Eventually, the soul of the sensitive artist was broken. Red, crimson, scarlet. In a frenzy, the artist embarked on a rampage of murder and creation. It did not end until he turned the sword on himself and forged his last masterpiece. A mace owned by a warrior monk who was charged with fighting pirates. When he sailed the seas with his son at his side, no pirate could feel safe. One day, they encountered a gang of pirates led by a wizard. The wizard summoned a sea dragon to fight by his side, and during the fierce battle that ensued, the monk's son was slain. Rendered mad by the loss, the monk slaughtered the pirates and the dragon, but no matter how much he raged, he could not bring back his beloved son, and the monk soon died of grief. Eventually, the sad tears of the monk reached the merciful god of the sea. In sympathy, the god took the monk's mace and made it powerful with magic and the talons of his own claws. In ancient times, this black sword once belonged to a mighty king who built a glorious empire. Under his wise and just rule, the empire thrived and prospered and knew no equal. But a ripened fruit can only rot. Spoiled by their wealth and prosperity, the servants of the king began to swell with pride, fell into corruption and depravity. Powerless to cease the rot, the king summoned a wicked god into the blade of his sword. He then began to murder his treacherous vassals one after another. The god inside the blade reveled in the bloodbath. When only the king himself remained, the sword slew him as well, and the silver blade was dyed black by the royal blood. This was the staff of a lean, thin wizard. His mean indifference and cold heart made him hated by the townspeople and his apprentices. Growing fearful for his own life, the wizard used the black arts to form a staff with fearsome power that drew its energy from the wizard's own life force. As the staff gathered more and more energy to itself, the wizard grew thinner and weaker, but the wizard was intoxicated by the staff's power and could not let go, no matter the cost. Obsessed with protecting himself from his resentful apprentices, the wizard clutched the staff tight until he died. In the end, all that remained of him were brittle bones and dried, translucent skin. They say that the Reaper waits by the gates to Hades. With his scythe, he cuts the passage to eternal darkness, a place from whence no soul has ever returned. A man was sentenced to enter dark Hades. He waited beside the Reaper as the grim god sliced open a passage to the darkness. At that moment, the man swung his sword at the Reaper. The blade struck home, and the Reaper was felled. "Foolish human," he laughed. "Your sword cannot help you now." As he spoke, the scythe rose up and cut off the man's legs with one blow. The true guardian was not the Reaper, it was the scythe, and by the gate it still awaits for each sinner in his turn. In a time when gods and mankind still lived together on the earth, a great war raged between the gods and the demons. The nights burned red, and scores of gods fell victim to the hellfire. The conflagration burned for 10 days, then a flood covered the earth for 100 days, and then for 1,000 days great tempests swept the land. All plants and animals were turned to dust. But at last the gods struck down Belial, master of the giants and mightiest of the demons. They shut him up in his hell, sealing the entrance with layer upon layer of thick ice. It is said that the blade of this poleaxe is made from a scale of the demon, cut from him when the gods sealed him into his hell. A mace that belonged to a priest who gave his soul to demons. When his cult was still young, the demons spoke to him, commanding that he gather fresh souls. The priest offered sacrifice after sacrifice to the demons, crushing each victim's head in turn. Blow by blow, the mace brought his ambitions closer to his grasp. As the cult grew, so did the mound of crushed skulls. But then the skulls shifted and transformed, turning into the face of a man the priest knew all too well. The face was the priest's own. He had paid the ultimate price and was turned into a demon. He rose and bid farewell to his earthly body. When I first met him, I found it hard to imagine that the irascible, smelly monk that stood before me was once the vessel of such a mighty lord. Yet the gleaming sword that he held at his side suggested his tale might be true. What under heaven had happened to bring such a knight so low? He told me that he had grown tired of the feuds of the noble families, but it is a hard thing for any warrior to abandon the discipline of the way of the sword. At that time, things might have gone better, he said, looking thoughtfully into the sky. I suppose that now, in some place, he is coming near to the end of his path. Balberith is the demon who seals all pacts between devils and humans. His evil contract sent ill-fortuned men and women one after the other into hell. One time, Balberith fell in love with a human woman. This woman's father was very sick, and she appealed to the demons to save her father. But Balberith knew that with a contract she would be thrown into hell and lost to him forever. He fought and fought, and at last decided that he himself would go to hell in her place. But when he hurried to the girl's home, he found the father dead. The girl's lifeless body lay beside him as if in sleep. Ignorant of death, the demon tried to shake her awake over and over again. A fearsome hammer that has the power to steal memories. With each blow of the weapon, the victim loses more of himself till he forgets his own identity. One day, a soldier who carried the burden of a sorrowful past acquired the hammer. He began to strike himself in the head so that one by one his memories began to disappear. But as each unhappy memory was extinguished, an earlier one welled up in its place. Death of his comrades, the unhappy decision to become a soldier, the murder of his parents. When at last all the sad thoughts were gone, and only the memories of a child full of hope and promise remained, it was too late. The soldier's skull was broken and he fell over dead.